are listening to Art That Saved My Life with your host, Justin Fink. Hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful for your time and your attention. I know how valuable those commodities are these days. My name is Justin Fink. I'm a licensed professional counselor. As well, I'm a musician, an artist, if you will. I love to write. I went to film school. I love comedy. I've done improv. Creating is just in my blood. So, of course, I wanted to make a podcast that really honors this gift that art is. Without a doubt, there's no way I would be here without art. I know how much music, movies, paintings, poetry, etc. is just medicine for people. Another big reason I started this podcast is because I really want to get to know people. There are so many people in my life who I can consider myself close to, yet their history, the things that they really struggled with, are a complete mystery to me. I've found that it's through these struggles that we really find meaning in life and we really get clear on what our values are. And art is like the life raft that it keeps us from drowning. We had a death in my family earlier this year. I lost my little sister, Ava. She was in a car crash. She was only 25 years old. And the thing that breaks my heart the most is not really being there more for her. I know conceptually that it's just life and we were just where we were on our paths. And I think people in general make it a habit to hide their pain from each other. And we're really good from even hiding it from ourselves. So I wanted to create this show to not only celebrate the art that helps us thrive, but also to show the world that we have nothing to hide. It's actually in exposing our hearts to each other that we can finally get that intimacy, closeness that we're longing for, as well get the support and compassion and empathy that is really necessary to make it through life. So coming up is a conversation I had with my best friend, Austin C. Pruett. Austin is a beautiful soul, one of the funniest people I know, just naturally curious and compassionate. And we were randomly assigned as roommates my freshman year of college. And it was around this time that I had a really bad relapse with my anorexia. I lost a lot of weight. My family was worried. It was not a pretty situation. However, it was also around that time I discovered Cannibal the musical, which is such a delightfully weird movie. I really hope everyone is inspired to watch it after listening to this. And it was such a joy to discuss what happened with my good friend Austin. This happened about 19 years ago, almost to the day, and I don't think we ever discussed it since then. And I think it was maybe always kind of hanging over us. So it was really good to clear the air, and it was really good for our friendship. It was great for me to get clarity on the whole situation, to forgive, and really helped me close the chapter on that. So please enjoy. If you're struggling with anything similar to what I mentioned in this podcast, please do not feel ashamed to get help. To be in crisis is nothing shameful. It just means that whatever is going on in your mind just isn't working for you anymore. We need to have spaces where we can admit, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's okay, because once we admit that, then we can figure out who we are and where we want to go forward. So with that said, thank you again for listening, and I look forward to being on this journey with you. Take care.
Long way for us to go, but if we don't try, we'll never know. Stay optimistic, set our goals high. There's nothing we can't do if we aim for the sky is blue.
So let's talk just a little bit about why we love this movie.
Yes.
Just know, obviously this is a show about personal context and what it means. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about, what just surface level makes this movie so lovable.
Yeah.
when I was, first of all, and we texted this, but when I was watching it last night, I really felt like I was cheating on you by not watching it with you. I don't know if there's ever been another time that I've watched this movie without you present, or at least,
Wow. Yeah, I
um,
didn't. I cannot separate this film without thinking of you and I sitting in the DePaul dormitory
yes,
in
yeah,
Monroe,
uh-huh.
uh, passing the time as fresh 18-year-olds, fresh adults, passing the time, getting stoned and drinking Carlo Rossi, watching Cannibal the Musical.
That's
It
right.
wa-
That's right.
and I don't even know how we came across it. I was trying to think, like,
Mhm.
maybe we rented it from the DePaul library,
Yes. So
or
I have a distinct memory of being at the I forget what they called the dining hall, but we were all getting our food. And yes, you guys had checked it out the night before, and you guys were telling me about it. Um,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
so I
Because
had already seen it.
you had seen it. Yeah, I think you watched it with Mike Lee and Blake and Justin.
Oh, okay, okay.
These were all people who lived
Hmm.
around us at the time. But much like when I was on your podcast and we talked about the movie Scream, how, Scream became one of my most beloved movies next to this one. And it was
Hmm.
actually my sister and my cousin, they saw it like the day before. And I came
Mm.
home one day and they were like, you got to see this movie. So it was kind of that same,
Wow.
like, kind of like, get ready,
Yeah, yeah,
here comes like a piece of art that's going to be integral to your being.
yeah. It's a classic, and
Yeah.
I have met people throughout my life that say that they watch this movie like every Christmas with their family. Like it's like kind of a cult classic now.
It totally is. Yeah. I remember I was doing Wilderness Outward Bound. I was a guide, and there's another guide. And it was so funny because we were kind of clicking, kind of connecting, like, what are you into? He was into rugby. I was like, I can't relate to that. And then at some point, I don't know how, I think one of us said Spadoinkle, which is like the made up like catchphrase of this movie. And
Of course.
then we looked at each other as like Cannibal the Musical. And then like we spent the next 2 days just like quoting the movie and singing the songs. And it does like unite
I've
people.
never had much in the way of friends or family. My horse is the only pal I've ever known. I'd like to build a ranch in the Rocky Mountain air. A home for us, that's all I'm asking for.
That's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for. We're tired of being sick. We're sick of being poor.
And I think that's the joy of loving like a cult film, is that you find these people out in the wild, and it's like, I
Hmm.
know it's 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 not a good litmus test, but it really does tell me immediately I can trust this person,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
some
It's a
weird
certain
ways.
absurd
Yeah,
humor
yeah.
that, and there's some gross out stuff in the beginning
Mhm.
that, like, if you can make it past that, it's like you've kind of crossed a barrier.
Right.
And then, like, all of the jokes are very particular. So
Yeah,
if you stomach that and and you like it,
yeah,
then you're one of us.
yeah. That's right.
Oh, one thing for sure, nothing like the trapping life. I'm better than the baddest sailor. I make love to women 10 feet tall. I've got a chest of wonder and balls of thunder. I can break right through a wall. I love the sound of metal snapping on an animal's head. Sometimes they scamper, sometimes they whimper, but they always end up dead.
I've always wanted to be
right.
somebody.
So yeah, for anyone listening who's uninitiated, which I implore you to initiate yourself, is that this is a film made by Trey Parker and Matt Stone while they were in film school.
Yeah,
They
of South
actually,
Park fame.
that's right, that's right. They met in class at the University of Colorado Boulder, I believe,
and they were assigned a project together, and then they just started making like short videos together, much like me and you, Austin, have done over the years.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the story goes is that Trey Parker was actually engaged at the age of 22, which is around when he made this, and his fiance at the time, I don't know if she cheated on him or just left him, but he was heartbroken, and his
left him for an a cappella singer.
Is that true?
What he says. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And her name was Leanne.
Right. Yeah. So
Which is the name of the horse.
Yeah. Of course.
Hey, do you guys think it's true that she's a trapper horse?
Oh, a horse is a horse.
Of course, but
yeah. So he was so fueled by his heartbreak and kind of like spite that he threw all of his energy into making, because at first it was just a fake movie trailer. They were like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if there was a movie about Alfred Packer? And it's like, who could possibly make a whole movie? Let's just make a trailer. And then they made the trailer. And I think that happened. Who knows the timeline? But he was like so convicted after getting his heart broken. He was like, I heard in the interview I listened to last night, he's like, his words were, I just figured this would be the last thing I would ever be able to make, like he thought this was going to be a swan song. So he threw everything into it. So much so that he got kicked out of school. His grades suffered because he was so focused. But what happened was that they made the trailer, and then the trailer became like really beloved amongst like the faculty and students there. Much to the point where the chair of the film school was like, I will help you make money. Let's make this a feature film. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that's something that's really beautiful about this movie is like it had a lot of push and power from the community, to get it made. And Trey Parker's dad is in it. There's teachers from the school in it. There's other students, it's.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I think that's like something that maybe just psychically really resonated with me, because I'm all about, creativity and just going for it, like Lloyd Kaufman from Trauma, make your own damn movie. Like why wait, don't go to Hollywood and hope to get a deal. Like just make it happen. Right. And I love
it's very resonant, I think, with the theme of this show. Is that, Trey Parker was heartbroken in like a very sad, like kind of hopeless state,
right,
and used this movie that he was making as like an outlet to kind of channel those emotions and do something productive that, made the whole world smile.
And now I don't know why, but she's gone. And all I can do is try to carry on. Your eyes, your smile made my little life worthwhile. The sky was a lot more blue when I was on top of you.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And I think when anything is made with like that much like earnest heart to it, for me, my like bandwidth for forgiveness, let's say, is so much wider, because it's not, in no means, and no one would ever argue against this, is it a perfect film. It's like really, the film quality is not great. It's clear that most of these people are not actors. There's like really, really poorly delivered lines. There's like really awkward, like Neil Breen style, just like, but it's like, that's something I love about it too, is how homemade it feels. It feels like instead of getting like a nice pie from Whole Foods, like your grandma makes you this kind of gnarly but delicious, and it's gonna it feels way better, in your heart eating it. Yeah.
But in terms of like the music and the writing
Yeah.
And the jokes, you see a lot of South Park in there. Even Trey
Totally.
Parker does the Cartman voice at some point, which I think is the first appearance of Cartman's voice in anything.
Totally.
You know, a lot of their style is baked in there.
Well, she certainly is a spadoinkle horse.
Oh, hello. Could you tell us how much further it is to Provo?
We have to get some supplies for our big trip into the Rocky Mountains.
You'll never come back again. It's got a curse on it.
Provo?
The Rocky Mountains, I gotta warn you. You're doomed. 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 You're doomed. Doomed. Turn back while you still can. You're doomed. You're all doomed.
Thank you.
But the music especially is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just still holds up as a very funny movie, and amazing that like this was their first kind of effort.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, Trey Parker, he went to school for music first. He thought that was going to be his thing. He thought he was going to be a film composer or like a music, and that shows just how much he loves music. And obviously he loves musicals too, and these songs really do mimic, like the really, spirited, was it
Oklahoma?
Like,
I think was his biggest influence for this one. Yeah.
And I think, and that touches upon something that I have always loved, and I know that you love too, is like really inappropriate joy in the face of just like something so innately dark, So yeah, I mean, that for me always tickles me. Like Evil Dead 2 was my favorite movie in high school for that same reason, right? Like the mixture of the macabre and the zany, the comical, the goofiness, right?
It's all right there in the title. Cannibal, the musical. It's just like two sides of a different coin. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, the movie is a fun ride. I thoroughly enjoyed rewatching it last night.
Well, before we get too far into the movie, I guess I want to back up a little bit. I don't mean to take over your questioning duties as host.
No.
But so you and I met in 2005. We were paired together in the dorms at DePaul University in Chicago.
Completely random.
And totally random. And we had a lot in common right off the bat. We both loved Mars Volta. We both had played guitar, had a, good sense of humor. And so we got along really well. But you were going through some issues at that time in your life. And I guess I feel like this is an interesting format because like I don't think I've ever like asked you directly or like got on the record like what really happened that semester at DePaul. I mean, I know what the result was. I know what happened.
Right.
But I guess I don't really know how your mental state was like basically from the moment we met to the moment that you dropped out, which was like basically a span of like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't think we were close enough at that time to like really share like intimate emotional details about like, it was just like one day you were like, I dropped out. I'm going through some stuff. I can't do this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really appreciate you saying that. And yeah, that's like selfishly, that's what I was most looking forward to in recording this episode is kind of, cluing you in and getting closure and hearing your perspective as well. It's Rashomon, right? Like everyone has a different take on what happened, right?
Yeah.
But it is so funny how, like you just said, we had just met basically. We only known each other for a few months, and it's like in my memory, it's like when you said that, I was like, oh, that's right. Like we just met, like that's like our connection was so strong, that it's good to remember that.
Yeah. I mean, we we basically had one phone call. I wrote you a really insane letter about how I love going to Ozfest.
That's right.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, like from the very first day we hung out, I mean, I had like a long-term girlfriend at that time, and like we were all very close, me, you, and Joanna. And I just remember one of the first days we were hanging out, we were like walking from the dorm to get some lunch or something. And I don't even remember what it was, but you cracked some joke that was like so fucking witty that I was like, I love this guy. Like it was just like immediately, like I was just like, we are going to be such good friends. And it was just such fate for us to be paired together. And yeah, I mean, we just had so much in common. Like I remember us like watching the the Windows Media visualizer, listening to like Led Zeppelin. And there's like one video that we like totally lost where, do you remember when you were like, oh,
yeah.
Like when I think of the dorms, I think of that video.
And
our listeners will have no fucking idea what we're talking about. But it was basically like you were like creating a story around like a Led Zeppelin song that was about like an old prospector finding gold or something. And like, I mean, this was, I mean, almost to the day, Justin, because I think that the semester started first week of September.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 19 years ago.
God, that's so
like
insane.
That's more than half our lives, basically.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And yeah, it's crazy to think that next year will be the 20th anniversary of us like becoming friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like when we first met, it felt like we were like best friends right away. You know,
totally.
And but yeah, I mean, you even told me about your issue. I don't feel comfortable explaining what what you were going through at the time.
Yeah.
But you made it clear to me that was, you know, a part of who you were. Like when we first talked on the phone, like you kind of you wanted to like, make me aware that like that you were going through some stuff and that like I might encounter something. So I was aware coming into the dorms and meeting you. I mean, obviously it didn't affect how I thought of you or anything, but it was like I knew that it was a thing. I guess, I mean, I was 18 at the time, so I wasn't equipped at all to talk to you about it or understand it at all. So sorry, and I'm just giving a lot of backstory.
I love you sharing that because I'm surprised that was the case. I don't remember doing that, but that's kind of cool. Especially, you know, I think one thing that's even those only 19 years ago, I think the discussion around mental health has evolved so much. Where without a doubt, what I went through probably would not have happened because there would have been so much more support. There would have been more people talking about their own stuff. You know, I would have, you know, wouldn't have felt so alone with it all. So if there's one thing we can give kudos to Gen Z for, it's there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, can you describe though what was going on?
Yeah. So
if you're comfortable, obviously.
No. I mean, that's
the whole point.
Yeah, but it was like, nah. So, anyways, in the fourth scene of Cannibal the musical, just completely abandoned my own.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting how art kind of like helps you both cope with something and ignore it.
Yes. Oh, totally. Total distraction. And I think, you know, realistically, that's how like men in particular connect, you know, is over music and art because it's a little safer than, you know.
Yeah. Or sports or whatever.
Yeah.
Just something that has nothing to do with yourself, with their self.
Yeah. So anyways, so it's hard to pinpoint like where to start, but what I should say is that since I was 14 years old, so I'm just going to go like right into it, you know, the details. But when I was 14 years old, I was in a really dark place and I had a suicide attempt, and it was like the end of the year, freshman year.
Jesus, I didn't even know that.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. 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 It was really awful. It was like really orchestrated and elaborate, and I told many people I was going to do it, and even when I was doing it, I was like calling my girlfriend. So, when I look back, part of me feels like I knew I didn't want to go through with it. It was more.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when people say like, "Oh, the kid just wants attention," but
Mm-hmm.
that's what kids need, right? And there must have been a really big need for it. But
Yeah.
but regardless, yeah, 14. I was hospitalized, and I spent like 15, 16 days inpatient. And what happened was that I was inpatient, and then they saw my weight, which I was 6'5" at the time, about 6'4", 6'5", and about like 120, 125 pounds. So like rail thin. Yeah. And they asked me questions about body image, and I told them, I was just like, yeah, I mean, I'm not happy with my body. I think I need to lose weight. And then it was there that they were like, okay, well then that you're anorexic, you're dangerously underweight. You're detached from the reality of your body composition so then because of that, uh, if it was just depression, I probably would have been out much sooner. But with anorexia, it's so dangerous. You're underweight. They want to stabilize you. So I was institutionalized basically, and then from there, I went to. It was like two. This was like during my summer, but it was like a month and a half, 2 months of an outpatient program of people with eating disorders, and I will emphasize that it was people, not kids. So I was 14 years old, and the majority of the population was like, late 20s, 30s, some, and it was mostly women. Like very, obviously very, very sick and neurotic women. So they talk about. Like I remember in that movie Blow, he's like, you're not a criminal until you go to jail, right? And then you
Right.
in prison you learn what it means to be a criminal, being around other criminals, right? So it was like,
Yeah. You're just a person until you meet people who are like you, and you're like, oh wow, I'm
yeah,
this person. Yeah.
yeah, and to see people who were like even further down the road, and just like it was a very traumatizing experience for sure, for
Yeah.
anyone to just be thrust into that. It was a very unsafe environment, just scary, and they had me on these like pretty heavy duty antidepressants. So I was like numb out and tired all the time. So like I wasn't even processing anything. But anyways, so from there on, it became like a part of my identity. Like I'm this kid with problems, right? And I've got this mind that's dangerous and wants to kill me.
And just to be clear,
Mhm.
because we haven't said the actual like diagnosis, but like were they like you're anorexic or like you have body dysmorphia, or like what were the doctors telling you, or like how did you identify, or how do you identify?
Yeah. No, they said you have anorexia. That's like that would be on the file is anorexia nervosa. Yeah. And that was, I don't identify with that now. That's I don't, as a therapist myself, I have a hard time with diagnosis in general
Yeah.
I have such empathy because of what I went through, of being told, you're almost branded, you're obviously diagnoses are helpful, right? It's like, okay, here's the illness. Now we got to treat it. But to be told, it's one thing to say you have this, and then another thing to kind of imply you are this, right? Like this is a part of who
Yeah.
you are. And really,
That's one thing that I've always been curious about with like alcoholism or drug addiction. People say like, I will always be an alcoholic. Like I haven't drank a drop in 30 years, but I am an alcoholic forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or?
For a long time I did, until I, really got into more like kind of holistic healing, getting to the root of the problem, basically. There's a story in therapy, which is just like somebody goes to a rehab center and there's a therapist there and he says like, what's your problem? And then the new patient says, my problem is I drink too much. And then the therapist says, no, you drink too much to treat the problem. What's the problem? Right. So anorexia, that it was, and I've dismantled this since then, but it was treating the problem. It's how I treated, and these are emotional wounds. So, and I think there's an element of control in there, but there's also an element of shame. There's a big element of shame to say, there's something broken in me. Like there's some, demon in me that will take over at any moment,
will never leave me.
Yeah. And I fully believe that these wounds can be healed, and the narrative can be
Lincoln Park.
That's right.
Sorry. It's crawling in your skin.
That's right.
These wounds, they will not heal.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but they will.
R.I.P. Chester.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's a very prescient lyric, that belief, right? And I think that's, not to get dark, but that's why people do kill themselves, is they're convinced they'll never be better. So, that they're I'm always going to be damaged. I'm always going to be broken. I'm always, these wounds will never heal, right? Like, and that projection into the future, I know it. It's terrifying, and it's very disempowering.
Yeah. So you're 14. All of this horrible stuff happens. You're exposed to this whole world of trauma and people who have dealt with this their whole life.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you go to college and you're set loose. At that point, were you feeling more in control over yourself, like better?
Yeah. So I will say that there were like other programs throughout like my adolescence. Like I went to this camp, which I love. It was like, I went to this camp that summer and it was like I had spent this whole summer being institutionalized. And then I went to this camp in Missouri and it was like really run by very emotionally healthy people, like very grounded people. And I distinctly remember having the thought like 3 or 4 days in is like, wow, they're really treating me like there's nothing wrong with me, and like the huge relief that had on my system. So anyways, I digress on that, but I'm still involved with this camp. I go every summer. I have so many lifelong friends from it and they're
as a counselor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't pretend to be a kid. I need help.
Hello, fellow students.
Yeah. But anyways, I continue to struggle. 14, 15. My mom sent me to a boarding school in Minnesota for junior and senior year. My junior year, I didn't do too hot. And then in between junior and senior year, my mom sent me to a wilderness therapy program. It was like 6 weeks out in the woods, surviving and doing like deep emotional work and stuff. But whatever happened there, it did help my confidence. And then my senior year was, I really flourished. I had these friends that I loved. I really started connecting with people, connecting with the community there. I had a therapist who I trusted. I was like, there was structure, it was like 4 to 6 p.m. You're going to do your homework, it wasn't like strict, but I felt safe, I felt, and most importantly, I felt like I had a community, right? So after I graduated that, I had to leave all my friends they all lived in Minnesota, so I was going back to Chicago and I remember the next month after I graduated, just being in a lot of grief, like a lot of sadness, just total, loneliness, and if we're going to get into like going back to, you drink to treat the problem, what's the problem? Loneliness is big part of it, loneliness,
Yeah, yeah,
longing for community, connection, love, so,
yeah.
but
Also, we're both children of divorce, which
yes,
I know had like a huge mental toll on me.
yeah.
And I wonder if that might have played into a little bit. I mean, because yeah, when you're a kid and like you're having to go to two different houses, you're dealing with like two separate personalities. It's like somehow like the mother father unit like splits your mind into,
Totally,
and
totally.
it's hard to like find the center again.
Absolutely.
At least that was like my experience, and so
Yeah.
I wonder if like some of that loneliness like stems a bit from there, and like feeling a little disconnected from your parents and still like being a child, really,
Yeah, no, big time. I mean, I think you hit nail on the head. I would only see my father probably like you, like every other weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you on this respect, but like my dad really kept a distance outside of those visits. So it was like, he would drop us off and it would be like, okay, well, I guess I'll see you when I see it, and as a kid, that's like really devastating,
Yeah.
Um,
It was a little different with my dad, but he was very much wanting to be a part of our lives,
okay.
for every moment, but it was to the detriment of my relationship with my mother, because he wanted to take me away from her, basically, and like he was like, I don't know, like kind of competing for attention and time with me, so
yeah.
And my brother.
Would your parents put each other down a lot? Like
yeah,
to you?
yeah, big time. And my mom kind of wised up to it, like realizing, I think, like, okay, this is their father.
Right.
I shouldn't be saying those things about him.
Yeah.
But at least through my adolescence, like that was not the case for my dad. It was a little.
And yeah, that's very confusing for a kid, to have all these mixed messages about who your father is, who your mother is, because kids are defining themselves through their parents, and there's this quote, which is like, I inherited my father's looks, his sense of humor, his personality, his attitude on life, and my mother's resentment of my father.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's sort of the opposite for me. I feel like I kind of take on a little bit more of my mom's like gregariousness, whereas like I did take on a lot of my dad's resentment of my mom after the divorce. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're talking about you.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, it's helpful because, especially because, like I said, the theme was loneliness, right? The theme was feeling just like something had gone wrong, and yeah, I will mention just
like you're lost in the woods with nothing to eat.
That's right. That's right. And there's a cyclops out there.
And you don't know the Dixieland song.
So yeah, the only the thing I'll add to that is there's some other precipitating factors to the loneliness, which is I'm one of 7 children, right? And there's 4 different fathers, and my mom's been single for most of my life, so like it was like financially speaking, resources, but in terms of attention, love, affection, resources were limited, right? And I think the last nail in the coffin in terms of like childhood trauma was that we had a stepdad named Ken. And he came in when I was like 5 or 6, and then he became my dad for all purposes. He was around, he lived with us. He was very fun. He was very, he really seemed to care about us and like enjoy us. That's a big thing, is that like he really wanted to do things with us, which just, felt so good to have that. But him and my mom split up shortly after having my 3 little siblings. And then after that, this really twisted darkness kind of came over him, in the way
Mm.
that really only happens in movies. It seems like when someone's like losing, it seems like they're losing everything, and then they get all twisted and try
They
to hang
just
on.
snap.
Yeah, and he became emotionally very abusive to all of us, like a lot of guilt, a lot of, he would berate my mom to the 10th degree and really play into, he would say like, "Oh, your mom has no time for you. I feel so bad for you," and like really kind of like pull me into this like victim space. But he was doing that for the purpose of me, having more affection for him. He was playing with my emotions, and then he just got like emotionally violent, and there's even, I don't want to go into it, but there's myself included, there's instances of like physical and sexual boundaries that don't quite go into straight up like molestation or pedophilia, but were very inappropriate and uncomfortable, and kind of him. I look at it as like him trying to just hold on to us, basically, because he felt like he was losing us. So he left a horrible mark, and at one point he left me this like CD player. He bought it for me, and I was like 12, 13 years old. I was like, "Oh, thanks." Like I didn't have the reaction he wanted, and then he sped off in his car. He just like got in his car, sped off, and then he called the house phone, and he's like, I picked up, and he goes, "You better watch out, or else you're going to turn into a bitch just like your mother," and then hung up. And then the thing is that was literally the last time I saw him. Like that was it, and at 12, and at 12 or 13, it's like, what the fuck did I do?
Yeah.
This guy was dad, this guy was it. And now he's gone. And it's like,
yeah, what an awful thing to say.
I know, it's just terrible. And it really,
and that he like gave you a gift, and then it's like you're stuck with this gift from a guy who like warned you about your possible future, and so then you have like everything tied up. I mean, like when I was 12, 13, like my CD player was fucking everything. It was like I carried it everywhere. Like listening to music was everything to me. So it's like, I don't know if that was like that for you, but I mean, like to have like an object that's so tied up with something so horrible.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was just I think confusing is the best word to use for that whole time, and lastly, I'm not going to put her on blast. She had so much going on in her life, but things with my mom were never that great. She a short fuse. She was stressed a lot. I think for all of her kids, or at least for me and my two closest siblings, we just wanted to be good kids. We didn't want to put too much on her plate. It would be like very, very unpredictable, like what would set her off, like what would upset her, and it just like, it created this like tension that I just know, the purpose of even getting into all this is just to help explain how just alone and unsafe I felt, at 14. And then after, I got diagnosed, that really freaked her out.
Yeah.
And I think, if there was some subconscious intentions of like, oh, this will finally get me what I need, it got really the opposite. It got like what be careful what you wish for. Like if I was looking for more presence and love and compassion, what I got was like more control, more, just fearful and the thing that I think scarred me the most was she was big into the devil, and she would talk about the devil a lot. Yeah. I mean, there were times where she would say like
she was a Satanist.
No.
She's just dressing in black robes and lighting candles.
Big into the devil. Yeah. No, she was big into like citing or blaming the devil for like all my problems. So if you can imagine, like a kid who's literally starving to death, who's just wants to be held and loved and told everything's going to be okay. And then, the parent, he's the only parent who's around because dad's not even around, right? The only parent who's around is going like, you're haunted basically. Like you have a demon inside of you. That's the message I was getting. And it was like, oh my God, and wow. Anorexia is all about control. It's all about,
Yeah.
it's all about, I don't feel safe. At least I can control what I eat. At least I can control my body, as well. There's that promise of like, one day I'll look good enough that, someone will love me. Someone will come
Yeah.
along and want to be with me. So it's a long backstory, but it's really necessary to explain what happened our freshman year. So senior year ended that summer. I was feeling better. I was feeling good. I was feeling ready. The collective narrative was like, Justin's better, that he's ready to, be a healthy kid,
be an adult, go to college, be on his own.
That's right. That's right. So freshman year, like I met you, and what I should mention is that all throughout high school, I had this really strict, straight edge mentality. I was like, no drinking, no smoking of any kind. I was kind of snobby at times, to my friends who would do it. I would look down.
Yeah.
But anyways, the first night of college, it was like, it's college, and we drank Carlo Rossi and jammed, and I was like, this is awesome. It was just like, I feel so relaxed. I feel so, in the moment. And then I walked over to our suite mate, Christian's room. Yeah. Who's a friend of ours still. And he gave me my first taste of marijuana, and it was like, holy shit, this is, I'm even more relaxed,
Yeah. Was that really the first time you ever smoked?
That was the first time. Well, I had tried before in like the 7th grade, but I didn't get high. That was the first time I ever got high. And that night, as we were getting high, an RA busted us.
Right.
Yeah. And
Forgot about that.
I remember like the first, that night being like, holy shit, I'm going to get kicked out of college. Like that was my first thought. I was like, my mom's going to be so pissed. Like, this is going to be terrible. And then I met with like the dean or something. And he was like, just write an essay, explaining your contrition, like, why you feel bad for what you did. And I wrote some bull crap,
Yeah.
But anyways, but so then from then on, I discovered, alcohol and weed. And it was like, I feel great, and we were connecting and laughing. And you mentioned that that video that's lost of me like kind of riffing on Led Zeppelin. And the thing is that like I've always been, and it's wavered in and out throughout my life, but I've always been like a pretty shelled up person. I've always, a lot of fearful of people, fearful of rejection, so I was free, like my with the help of substances, I was free. I could like play and laugh and, have fun. But unfortunately, when you're in school, you also have to do school, and that
also have responsibilities. Yeah.
And that had no appeal to me whatsoever. It was like, why the hell would I do this? I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was, and this was the first time I got to try, being a kid and just goofing off and it was like, it felt great, But what I will say is that at some point, I don't know what happened, but it must have came, I'm guessing it was because I knew I was slipping in school. I think that was the trigger that kind of brought the anorexia back. Because what I've come to discover is that a big trigger for me is feeling like a disappointment. That unfortunately, my relationship with my mother throughout much of my life has left me with that wound, that feeling, and it's ancestral. That's how her mother made her feel. That's how, my grandma's mother made, it's just
generational trauma.
Yes, exactly. So I just remember at some point, like I wasn't going to classes. I wasn't doing my homework. There were girls that I had my eyes on that I was just like, I'll finally have, I want a girlfriend. I was still virgin. I was like, I want to get laid, and with that, my hyperfixation on my body increased, like the body dysmorphia got worse, whereas I would look in the mirror and be like, who would want to sleep with it? Who would want this? But it's gross, So then I started working out more, I started eating less. I think I went vegan at some point. I was like, I'm a vegan now, and it was just totally, again, just trying to control myself, trying to, have control over something because I felt, out of control. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And I knew doom was headed, in terms of just
all doomed.
Exactly. That's a line from Cannibal. But that's
the harbinger.
That's right. And that's what was going on. So we'll get back to Cannibal in a second, but because I discovered Cannibal right around that time that I started slipping was when, you guys were like, oh, this movie Cannibal, so it was almost like, all right, you're going through some shit, but here's a life raft to hold on to, it was just like something that brought me joy. But
a movie that's about eating.
It's about, that's what I noticed. That's what I noticed last night is that it's they're literally starving, they're and the theme of like people eating each other, that as opposed to supporting each other, working together,
Yeah. I wonder if like somewhere like subconsciously you're like, oh, I relate to these guys, like walking through the wilderness, lost, starving.
Totally. Absolutely. What happened was, so eventually I had to like withdraw from an English class, and I had to tell it became too late to not tell my mom anymore that I was struggling, and as was expected, total pandemonium, I can't emphasize this enough that it's not my intention to put my mom on blast. I just don't think she had the skills. She didn't know what she was dealing with ever with me, like I said, mental health was not even, was hardly discussed back then. But I know if I had a kid and it was like, dad, if Jonas, my son, was like, Dad, I had to withdraw from class, I would be like, oh man, what's going on? Like, what do you need? Like, do you need to come home? Like, you must really be going through something. But unfortunately, I didn't get that response. I got this like, you fucked up. Like why, and this like very personal kind of like, why would you do this to me? She was so upset that we were, back at it again. I thought you were all better.
Disappointing her.
Yes, exactly. And then there was actually a night towards the end of the trimester, her and my dad took me out to dinner. And that's when they saw how much weight I had lost. That actually throughout the semester, I had lost like 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And that's when they saw. And I just remember my mom being like, it could have been a little different, but in my memory, it's like, what have you done? Again, it wasn't that compassion I needed, that empathy. It was like, what have you done? And then my dad shed a tear. I've never seen him cry in my life, and she even said like something like, look what you're putting him through, which was, it was just like, good God, so anyways, after that, I had to, well, okay. So what happened was that like I had a conversation with my mom, and I remember she was like, if you want to stay in school, here's the deal. You're going to live at home with me. She was basically like, you're never going out. You're going to work. She had her own company. She's like, you're going to work at my company. All of your paychecks are going to go to me, and you're going to take the metro to class and come right back afterwards. And it was like, and she was like, or you're 18, you can just move out. And I was like, I like the or, that plan A does not sound great.
Yeah.
And a friend we had made, Blake Carlson, he had a girlfriend at the time, Marie. Talk about an angel, but I don't know if she had, some sort of motherly complex from her own mother, but like I really got the sense that she wanted to take care of me, and she was like, you can live in my living room. You know, she had a nice 1-bedroom apartment, and I was like, okay, you know, and I crashed in her living room for like 2 months. And I had a job for a week, and I got fired from it because I was too slow, you know, and
What was the job?
it was a pasta bowl. I was like
Oh.
yeah, I was answering phones and putting to-go orders together, and I was just like, do you know, okay. Sucks. Yeah. But I was there for like 2 months, and again, more just like onslaught from my mom, you know, of just like, you're tearing up this family. I think one of the darkest parts was my nephew Noah was born December 23rd of that year. And my oldest brother Ryan wanted to make well, he called me to explain that he was going to make me the godfather and Whitney, my sister, the godmother. But because of, and I forget how he worded it, but the impression was like, because of how you're failing, you know, because of how you're like really, you know, not showing up or letting the family down, like I can't honor you with that. And he chose like a friend or something. And that was, holy you know, it was just, as I tell this story, it was like one thing after the next of like, you know, and I really carried this. Like I really carried this for so much of my life, this sense of like, you really fucked up. You really fucked up. You should have known better. You shouldn't, you know, what you're, you know, the devil, you know, all this guilt and shame. And it's like, I was a fucking kid. I was 18 fucking years old, you know, it was like, it was brutal. It was just brutal, you know?
It just seemed like nobody knew how to address it. Nobody knew how to get you back on track. I mean, obviously all of this stuff is because people were concerned about you and wanted the best for you.
Yeah.
But it seemed like everybody's response to it was actually just getting you deeper into that hole.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest lesson from it, and I really appreciate you saying that, because I know that in my heart now that everyone just, it was I can't imagine how painful it was for people just to see me like that. I mean, there were a lot of people who were certain I was going to be dead, you know, like they were like, he's going to kill himself. Like it's over, you know, and so I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, I was so embroiled in shame at the time that all I could hear, like if people were to say like, you know, like it really pains me, you know, to see you this way. All I could hear was, look what you're doing to me, you know, like you know, it's just like, oh, okay, another person I'm putting through hell because I can't get life right. So
well, one thing I can say about my perspective of you at that time, I didn't see any of this. Like, I wasn't seeing the weight loss. I wasn't seeing like the trauma. I wasn't seeing any of the problems with your family.
Right.
Like it was just, we were just hanging out, having a great time. Like you never like, you, I mean, maybe there were a few times when you opened up to me and saying like you're upset or, you know, I probably did the same thing with you every here or there, but nothing to a point where it's like, I am on like the brink of life and death. Like I'm in true crisis. You know, I never got that sense. It wasn't until after you dropped out that like it became a little clearer to me that you were going through something really serious.
Yeah.
But as I said in the beginning, like to this day, like I don't know half of the stuff you're telling me right now. So, I mean, I think that, you know, that's just to say that I think that I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but like you do a really good job of like just being a normal good guy, you know, throughout like some kind of turmoil.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's common for people who are going through something really serious. It's like obviously they don't want to kind of put that on everybody, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. And I think that's like, that speaks to the loneliness, you know, of being a master hider, you know, just so good at compartmentalizing and self-control and the biggest thing is that people were telling me like you're sick, you need help, or you're not in good space, and it was like I didn't want them to be right. I didn't want to. In my mind, it was like I didn't want to admit defeat. I wanted to prove to everyone that I could do this. And back to the movie, back to Cannibal, is that was Alfred Packer's demise, at least in the film, because
true.
of the trappers. He wanted to prove them wrong, and he was so convinced that they stole his horse, that they were like, I'll show them, I can make it to, the territory that they're going to. And it was like, that's the moment of the movie when he says, so they sing the song, "It's All I'm Asking For," right?
Yeah.
And I thought that such a beautiful song, such a simple sentiment, and exactly, that's all I was asking for. I just wanted a happy life. I just, that's all we really want, right? We just want to be happy, right?
Yeah. Or I mean, I think when I think of this movie, obviously, I think of the Snowman song. I think that's the hardest we ever laughed together. Like, or that was the moment when like we just lost our minds.
Yes.
Just total hysterics.
Yeah.
But that song, it starts off like very somber, like maybe we'll all die, so let's build a snowman.
Totally.
Yeah, and like that character of Swan, he's just like this overly optimistic, overly happy person when they're like literally starving and dying.
Yeah.
And I just remember us just cracking up when the guy goes over with the pickaxe and just smashes the snowman.
So good.
Like just like literally on the floor laughing.
That character Swan is so amazing about his like his unbridled commitment to optimism.
Yeah.
Like when they first find snow and he's like, hey, we should build a snowman. And he like
he's like throwing snowballs at him. And even when he's dead, he's got that big smile on his face. It looks like he's gonna sing a song. They push in, it's like, no, he's dead.
But yeah, it's I've talked a lot about family dynamics and how just as a collective, we had no idea what we were dealing with, and we all kind of dropped the ball. But the real heart of the issue is life itself, is that I can sit here and blame my family and say, oh, they're so this or that. But the truth is that, life is the culprit in that, all of our neurosis is like, how do we deal with the uncertainties of life? How do we make ourselves feel secure with the fact that people do starve, people do die, that we don't know what's coming next. And there's Cyclops out there, there's bad people out there that can wish us harm. And
we aren't Southern boys.
We aren't Southern boys. We're not welcome. Right.
We're stupid Yanks.
So, I think it's, and really everything I struggled with mentally is, if you put it in like a petri dish and you just like looked at the like molecular makeup, you would see the same things in the psyches of all of my siblings and all of my aunts and uncles. It's like, again, it's like I inherited certain viewpoints, I'm not the first person in my family who had an unhealthy relationship with food. I think I was the first person who didn't get away with it, because I took it to the next level, and that's just one example. Right. And I hold nothing but, understanding.
There's forgiveness there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just understanding, it's, like Jesus said, when he was getting his nails in his wrist and he said, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing, and that's the truth, is that there's just so much fear and fear makes us idiots. The bottom line is it doesn't allow us to address the real needs of the situation,
Yeah. So what were, it's kind of interesting you talk about this because it's like, if you look at it chronologically, it's like you were doing great until you watched Cannibal. Like,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's like actually after you watched the movie, everything went to shit.
Yeah.
But but I mean, obviously something about this movie, or maybe the things that we were ingesting and the way that we were relating in those first years, was giving you some sort of comfort, or kind of helping you maybe ignore or cope with what you were dealing with internally.
Yes. Yeah.
But what was it about this movie that you like associate with like a positive, like where it's like, I mean, other than it just being a really funny movie and we cracked up and had a great time, but is there something about this movie, or maybe something else during that time, that was really helping you through this crisis?
Yeah. I mean, I think really, you know, if we want to like give more meaning than was ever intended in this movie, it is a movie about resilience, right? It's you know, because that's something we haven't talked about, is that Alfred Packer is unfairly, you know, put on trial here, right? Like the whole town hates him, right? And I think I related to that, right? That you know, not that everyone hated me, but like that feeling of like, what are you doing? You know, what have you done? You know, and it's it's like, I'm just surviving, you know, I'm just doing what I can, you know.
True.
So I think there was like solace in that. I think the musicality of the movie, you know, is just to have it overlaid with the tragedy of everything is like a reminder that there's, you know, you can really laugh through anything, you know.
The absurdity of the sorrow of the true situation.
Right.
And just, laying this spadoinkle all over it.
But that's, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is that like, I never, throughout my life, with I think a few exceptions, I really never lost my sense of humor, you know, and
that is for sure.
That's, that has to be, you know, one of the biggest reasons I'm still here. If I ever took this, you know, 100% seriously, it would have been over, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I think that was the message of the movie too. But yeah. And like I said, you know, that movie is infused with the energy of the community that built it, you know, that there's so much love that went into that movie. And I think I felt that.
And it was inspirational for us. I mean, like, because I mean, at the time they were making that movie, they weren't that much older than we were at the time we were watching it.
Right.
And we were kind of like, man, we should make a movie, you know?
It's totally.
We should make a snowman.
Right. Yeah, let's build a snowman. And you know, now that we just put it that way, I mean, I think that's what Swan Song. That's funny, Swan Song.
Yeah.
But his song about let's build a snowman, it's actually not just completely irreverent. It is about, life. There's always going to be pain. There's always going to be things going wrong, but like, make something, you know, go create something, go make a funny video, or, you know, pick up your guitar and write a song, or you know, that, and yes, throughout my life, you know, my sense of humor and music, you know, those are the two things. Those have been my, you know, on day one, God's like, I'm going to give you these two things, and that's going to keep you sane.
And this is such a great combo of both of those things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And not to mention the horror aspect of it, which you've always been prone to as well.
Yes.
You know, people's getting axes to the face, and you know, people getting their tongue ripped out, and all that stuff. I mean, there definitely is that element of it as well.
It's so crazy. When I was that winter, first of all, I wanted to bring this up because I know that, but you know, I've been watching The Simpsons, you know, for the past few years. I've been starting from the beginning, just going episode by episode. But the other day, I watched the episode where Bart shoplifts, Bones, right?
Of course, yeah.
Catfish. But
just take it. Take it.
As I was watching that episode, and Bart's like walking through wintry Springfield, I had this like really uneasy feeling, and I was like, what is it? And then I had to take a second to like kind of tune in, like, why am I feeling so, like, it was just like a depressed kind of feeling. And it's like, oh, that's how, that was my winter that year of feeling that, like, because that episode's about him disappointing his mother and feeling alone but I I remember that winter. For some reason, I was in the loop. Maybe I was applying for jobs, but it was nighttime, and they were having an evening mass. So I mentioned, the devil. My mom,
right, yeah,
raised us Catholic, but I decided to go into the mass, and I remember the priest or the father, whatever you want to call him. He was talking. He was delivering a sermon on the Book of Job. Are you familiar with that story?
Yeah. And you know what? I actually was thinking about this, that Alfred Packer is kind of like a Book of Job. Like, he is Job. Like, everything terrible befalls him. Like, he loses his horse. He loses all of his friends. Right. He gets, persecuted. Yeah. He gets unfairly hung, like, I that's so funny you said that, because I was thinking that yesterday.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, is that the preacher he was going into it, and I swear to God, he was like really embellishing the more gory details, because there's a part in the Book of Job where the devil is telling God, like, yeah, well, he still has his health. So then God gives him all these like disgusting boils. And there's a like part in the story where like Job like cuts open the boils, and like, takes a knife to his skin and the blood and the, and I, in my memory, and again, I was like kind of starving and like whacked out, but I swear the priest was like really getting really into like just the gory
the
details.
Horror of it. Yeah.
And I think that's just been a theme of my life, the have not shied away from the horrendous, gory details of life,
Yeah.
So I want to start wrapping up, but is there anything else? Any reflections you have that?
Well, I just want to say thank you for opening up so much. I mean, as a friend for almost 20 years, to kind of hear the details of this, horrible time in your life. I just feel so privileged to be your friend. I think that you're just like such an incredible person, and that, you've gone through a lot, and, I just feel so lucky that we met each other when we did. And, I hope that, I don't know. I don't know, when you say that, like, I like turned you on to drugs and alcohol, and then like everything came crashing down. Like, I hope I didn't have any part of like that crisis, like, I don't know. I feel a little bit of guilt, because I was very like, I was probably the most confident I've ever been in my life going into college.
Yeah.
It's like, I had like a really secure relationship. I was like, coming out of like being the lead singer of a band, like that like senior year of high school was like my confidence peak. I was just like, I had everything going for me.
Right.
And I felt maybe I was a little too oblivious to what was going on in your life. So, I mean, I hope I was a good friend during that time to you, and that like I didn't do anything to exacerbate your issues. I don't know. I mean, I guess, I know that we have a great relationship, but I guess when I think about what was going on with you at that time, and that I was so oblivious, I do like hold a little guilt about that.
Wow. I really appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is like, I've never once had a thought of, I can't believe Austin, wasn't, 100% who you were during that time. It was absolutely what happened would have happened no matter where I was in the world. Like these were patterns, these were emotional wounds that were going to take over no matter what, and maybe the drugs and alcohol kind of sped it up, and in the end, I think the point of all this is that I am grateful for everything I've been through. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's really, that was like my rock bottom in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like sometimes you have to hit rock bottom if the things that are driving you are unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, what I would say is that, like I said, like being your friend has always brought me, like you've been the Simpsons to me,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to entertain the idea of there being, some God or creator, then
Mm-hmm.
it's like you were a piece of art that was created
Oh,
for me to find
no.
comfort and joy, and it's I've laughed harder with you than I ever have with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and that's is such incredible medicine,
Mm-hmm.
I think a big moral of the story is we were kids. We were 18 years old,
Yeah.
and we 18-year-olds don't know shit,
Yeah, yeah. It's true.
and
It's true.
yeah, and you were, no, you've always been a great friend. You've always been very, attentive in my opinion. And you
Well,
know,
I also just am amazed at, how much you were able to give back while you were in crisis as well.
mm,
Because I just remember you as being like super
mm,
empathetic, always there to listen, always there to joke
mm,
around,
mm,
have fun, play
mm,
music.
mm,
Like you never pushed your problems on other people,
mm.
which I think is like really hard to do when you have like such inner turmoil.
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe you should have, maybe, looking back, maybe
yeah, yeah.
it would have helped you to be a little bit more open to
Big
those
time.
things.
Yeah.
But I think that also the fact that you were able to give so much back as
Mm,
a friend
mm,
during that time of crisis just says a lot about your character and
mm,
just like
mm.
what a great person you are, because it's like
Um,
you just want to like be you don't want to drag anybody else down. It
mm,
feels like it's like you just want to be a light. You just want to like be
mm.
a positive force in people's life, which I just think is such a great part of who you are. And I think that that's still what you do. I mean, like that's basically what you've turned your profession into.
Right,
And
right.
and
Yeah.
so I mean, I admire you for that, and I think that it's a great trait to have,
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
I love you for it.
Well, I love you too. I mean, infinitely. I mean, we're soulmates in so many ways,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and I'd be remiss not to mention how much an angel Joanna was as well.
Oh
She
yes.
was just such a, and her and I really connected. We really bonded over those few
Yeah.
months. She was, I could tell she had a lot
I
of,
think she saw what was
yeah,
going on.
yeah,
I seem to remember her being like, I'm
hmm
worried about Justin. And I'm like, Justin, he's fine. What are you talking about? It's
yeah.
like, didn't you see him just like laying prone on like the top bunk, staring at the ceiling for like 3 hours? I was like, yeah, but he just does that. That's just that's normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have like a pretty vivid memory of like coming home from the dorms and you
Hmm.
literally just laying flat on your back and just like staring straight up, and me just being like, "Hey, what's going on?" And you're just like,
Yeah.
"Hey,"
Oh,
and
wow.
then when I think
Wow.
back on like the signs that I should have seen, it's like
Right. Yeah.
that image comes to my head.
Oh man, that's haunting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope just that my wish for you is to really let that all go as best as you can. It's like
Yeah.
again, you were
Well,
young, we were young, and I'm good. Like
yeah, yeah.
I marched through those flames, and I was always destined to be okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's been one of my bigger challenges in life is letting people in, letting people see those parts of myself, I
Well, what a
think
huge step this podcast is then.
totally. I think that's kind of like course correction for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I think a big reason I never opened up was because I just so much shame, just like nobody should see this, this is
Mm-hmm.
this is an abject failure that lives in me,
Yeah.
and that's how shame, has so much power, is by being so secretive,
Yeah. It's how it manifests itself.
Yeah.
One last thing I'd like to say, just since this is your first episode,
Yeah.
and just to get it on the record,
Yeah.
where do you see this podcast going? What do you want it to do for people? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah. I really love that question. Well, for me, the biggest path to healing for me has been self-forgiveness, has been self-compassion. That is, I would say, of all things that we talk about culturally, even in mental health, like that is something that I think most people are very bereft and deficient in self-compassion, and I know that when we tell our stories and maybe we have someone there to show us, a different perspective than the one we've been holding, it's healing happens when our hearts kind of break for ourselves, when we go like, oh man, like at the end of the day, it's like, I just needed a hug. I just needed some love, so that, is a big, I want, I want this podcast to be a teacher of how we all just need compassion, how that was the only thing we needed. As well, I want to get to know people, it's like, I want to, there's so many people in my life who I don't know these stories, it's like it's a secret to them too, or maybe they've got a few people in their lives who know the stories, but like, I want to create that atmosphere of, we all have nothing to hide, basically, that shame doesn't need to bind us anymore, that we can be seen in all of our humanity and just the levity that comes from that,
Yeah.
And of course, lastly, I just want to emphasize how our souls or our hearts or maybe even our subconscious makes choices for us that our conscious mind may not be aware of, right? Like, why do we pick the pieces of art that we do, and why does it resonate with us? I don't think we ever fully understand why. It's just something deep within us is struck by it,
Yeah, and trying to unpack that.
Totally.
I mean, I feel like I see a lot more in Cannibal now, especially where you were at, and how that movie helped you through, or maybe process some things for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you luck, and I think that this is going to be great.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love you.
Oh, man.
And go get them.
Yes, go get them.
Go make a snowman.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up, and before we do, Austin, I just want to give you a chance to plug your podcast. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what that's all about?
Sure. Our podcast, me and my cousin Zach, we have a podcast which you've been on a couple times.
That's right.
Some of our greatest episodes.
Oh.
Actually, a tease of our Patreon episode is coming out tomorrow on 9/11. Never forget. And so the podcast is called Film with Family. It's me and my cousin Zach. We bring on our really good friends, or usually our family, just to talk about a movie, and it's a good time. We kind of are able to use the films, much like you're doing, like using the art to go into deeper subjects, talk about our family history, stories that we never knew about our family members. And it's a great time.
Yeah.
Check it out.
It's a wonderful podcast. It's definitely one I listen to as much as I can when I'm not listening to Conan O'Brien.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening and being on the show.
My pleasure.
And being a guest.
Sometimes the world is black and tears run from your eyes. And maybe we'll all get really sick. And maybe we'll all die. So let's build a snowman. We can make him our best friend. We can name him Tom. We can name him George. We can make him tall. Or we can make him not so tall. Snowman. He'll have a happy face, happy smile, happy point of view. If you build me a snowman, then I'll build one for you. So let's build a snowman. We can make him our best friend. We can name him Bob, or we can name him Beowulf. We can make him tall, or we can make him not so tall. Snowman. Hey! Completely nuts. For you. Snowman, snowman, snowman.